Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. It is a pleasure to have you with us. Every week, we try to bring you stories that we think will inspire you to see the world in some new way. Our particular interests in our service organization are interests related to education, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And I think we may be hitting all three of those with today's program. Our speaker today is Michael Cohen, the tech rabbi, and a guy who has really made a bit of a splash in the educational technology community, sharing messages all over the United States and beyond. And I am excited for him to be able to talk to us about the kind of interest he has in bringing out students' creativity and entrepreneurial tendencies in ways that can be wonderful at his school, Beulah Boys School in Los Angeles, California. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Michael Cohen, the tech rabbi.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be able to have a conversation today with all of you and to share some things that really inspire me. And it all began with this really powerful email. And the email is here, and I'll read it. It came into my inbox, and what happened was that it was one of those emails that literally changed the way in which I approach education. And I want to make sure it actually plays the email. My keynote working here. Here it is. Good. All right. So I just thought of an idea for an invention. The student sends me this email. That would be absolutely wonderful, but I immediately dismissed because it's not possible and I won't be able to do it. Then I thought of you and how you don't dismiss creativity. So I wanted to let you know and see what you think. Are you in school today? He says, thank you for the inspiration. And what happened when I got this email is that this email showed me that our students, no matter how strong they are academically, no matter how well they succeed in the game of school, they lack a level of creative competence. And because of that, a level of creative capacity. And what I realized is that I needed to fix that. And I started to think about the way in which my own experience in education and the experience that I see around me, even with teachers that want to think out of the box and want what's best for their student and know what's best for them, is that education has created a system which we have to put all of our energy into acquiring knowledge and skills, but very rarely, and for some students almost never, as I surveyed my incoming ninth graders today, work on tasks that contain significant amounts of unknown and abstract concepts. So I realized that our students lack belief, and don't get scared. I'm not gonna go all rabbi on you. It's not necessarily that type of belief. It's a belief in ourself. And it's belief in others. And it's a belief in something bigger than us. We don't give our students an opportunity to engage in this type of work and conversation. I was just speaking with a group of students today. We are running through a really cool experience, the 30 Circle Challenge, which was created by Bob McKim, founding professor and head of the design school at Stanford. And it's about divergent thinking. And I said to the students, part of the direction is to create recognizable objects out of the circles. And I said, recognizable to who? And the student said to me, it doesn't matter, it's recognizable to me. What does it matter if it's recognizable to others? I got really excited because I felt like this is a moment. This is why I'm at the school that I'm at right now. This is why they brought me here, to create an entrepreneurial focused program, not just to be entrepreneurial, to be entrepreneurs, but to think like an entrepreneur, is to give students opportunities to engage in high risk opportunities, keeping everyone safe, of course, but risking things might mess up, things might break, and to experiment. And then to actually take the academic skills and knowledge that we engage in and do something about what we are all familiar with, is those light bulb moments. And this quote, for me, it's my own quote. And I spent a lot of time really kind of thinking about this whole Edison phenomena. And I don't want to get political here, Edison, Tesla, I don't want to go there. But I do believe that Edison was not trying to invent the light bulb. He was trying to invent the ability for the world to see in the dark. He really led with empathy. Even if he was more of a marketer and really not an inventor, he wanted to get it out there because he wanted to help the world. And I want our students and ourselves as well. You know, we talk about student choice, student empowerment, but many times we don't talk about teacher empowerment. And I notice a trend in many friends of mine, many professionals around me, in and out of the world of education, mostly out of the world of education, where there's this phenomena, life coach. I don't remember any of my parents' friends talking about life coaches growing up. I don't remember any of my friends being a life coach. But now I have anywhere between 12 and 15 friends that their profession is a life coach. And people who are in their 30s and older, who are hungry to learn, but reflect back on their learning experiences in their K-12 days of their youth and realize that they weren't hungry for learning. And it's because they weren't trying to find a sweet spot in the work they do. This is the Japanese Ikigai sweet spot framework redrawn by yours truly. Thank God for art school. It so far has paid off quite nicely. And it's about really finding this space where it's not just what I'm good at, because I'm told that these things that I'm good at can generate income for my family, for me to make a living. But this idea that today, and with the drive of the fourth industrial revolution, as the World Economic Forum refers it, the innovation of technology and the way in which the world is shifting, we have more opportunity than ever to do what we love, to actually change the world and to impact people on a mass scale. And it's all strongly rooted in design. And whether it is a designer that is a visual designer, a design thinker, or a computational design is something that we do every day. And in the space of education, I'm really trying to push educators to look at themselves as designers, because that's what they are, but they didn't know how to describe it. It's just a nomenclature that when you don't have that vernacular, you don't know what to search for and what to look for beyond your peripheral of profession, which is, oh, I'm an educator, so I look in educational resources. I look in educational research. I look at leading educators, but I don't tap outside of education. So I believe that educators are all a designer for someone, including ourselves. And just a quick background for me, how did I get into this role? I think that's important. I started out as a designer. I worked as a marketing director and a head of design for a bunch of nonprofits. Did a lot of work in the marketing and design space. And I ended up becoming an educator. I always felt I was a designer who just happened to teach. I taught at Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in downtown Los Angeles. And I taught design because I'm a designer. And I got this survey from a student. Survey said, "Thank you. This class taught me how to be an independent creator and use tools to figure things out on my own." And it stood out for the heads of the program because I guess they weren't used to getting good feedback, maybe, whatever it was, but they shared this feedback with me. And for me, it blew me away because I've always had this drive and desire to help others and to teach others. And now I saw myself as I could actually do this in a structured way, and I could help students succeed and become independent. And that led me to take on an opportunity. I was recruited as a director of education technology. And I was at this school for almost 6 years, did a bunch of really incredible work. We launched and scaled a one-to-one program. I became an Apple Distinguished Educator. The school became an Apple Distinguished School. We were using, virtual reality, augmented reality, media creation, and I was so into it, but I lost my sweet spot. I lost it in the cloud of just driving forward innovation for innovation's sake. So I left my school to rediscover my own sweet spot. And I had an opportunity to travel the world, travel all over the country, consulting and speaking and just really connecting with educators all over the place and really gaining a deep appreciation and a deep insight into a national and on a small scale, a global approach to education. And that really changed everything for me. And I realized that I needed to take serious the idea of incorporating entrepreneurial and creative thinking into a school as a curriculum, as a dedicated series of courses. And it's all surrounded by this idea of creative thinking, and that creativity is a mindset, not an art set. I happen to be creative, as some people tell me, because I can draw and I can design and photography and video. But it's not that. It's the planning. It's the way in which I utilize tools to solve problems. And many of the times the problems, especially in a visual space, are about communication. It's how do I communicate an idea to make it memorable? I use the analogy quite often these days that you could, but you shouldn't wake up the morning before a marathon and run the marathon expecting to do well. But in the realm of creativity, we write it off automatically. Oh, I don't know how to draw, or I'm not musical. And we describe tendencies and we say we're not creative. Creativity is a way of thinking that just needs to be developed and experimented with. And I think that what happens is that our creativity is purged by the fear of being judged by others or having been judged by others. So for anyone that's listening right now, think for a moment back to when you were maybe in 2nd or 3rd grade. And if this didn't happen to you, you got lucky. You did something, you created something, and you were excited about it. You were proud. You constructed, you drew, you did something creative. And somebody said to you, that's not good. Like that's not good. It looks bad. I could do better. And I want you to think for a moment, how did that make you feel? That is a major struggle and a major obstacle in us being able to reach our creative potential. And when you look in the innovation space and the technology space, there are so many people that didn't listen to those other people. And sometimes that other is inside our head. It's ourselves telling ourselves that we are not creative. And so those people, you have the famous names, the Mark Zuckerberg, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, and they all dropped out of their top university to go innovate something. So I always tell my students when they bring up those names, I say, you have to get into Harvard to drop out of Harvard and to innovate. Like there's a prerequisite, like you have to do it in that order of sequence. And so what I challenge my students to do, and I challenge this school that brought me on, and I challenge the schools that I'm so grateful to be able to engage with all over the country, is that we have to explore. We have to open up exploration in our school in some capacity. So for some of us, we have heard of, but maybe haven't implemented, or we already are implementing a 20% time, which was made famous by Google. But at least in the research that I've done and the reading that I've done, it became, I'm going to say it was invented at FedEx. And whether or not that is true, they were definitely one of the pioneers of this, dedicating time on the job with resource access to create and innovate and do something incredible on the company dime to drive forth innovation. Google did it, and we all love Gmail. And Gmail is a product of 20% time. For me at the school, I came in December to Eula Boys High School. They recruited me mid-year, and I created a lunch elective because the schedule was already full. And I had 30 students willing to give up their lunch 3 days a week to engage in what was called an Entrepreneur Spark Studio course, like whatever that meant to them. And they did some really incredible things. And I'll share some of those later as we sort of develop the Q&A. I think it'll naturally arrive to the point now where it is a dedicated elective. That's a really high level. That has to have a very forward-thinking head of school and administrative team to believe that we can, quote unquote, risk wasting a block of time during the day to explore something that there is no script per se. And for some of us, it could be an after-school program. So I launched the Entrepreneur Spark Studio, and the focus of it was innovating. And that's such a cool word. People say, like, you're a director of innovation. What do you do? And I say, I'm like, I could tell you anything and not be wrong. It's such a buzzword. It's such a sort of abstract word. But I think that innovation is really about looking at the world in a way that others don't have that same perception or awareness and trying to improve the world. And that could be creating something from nothing, which many people do. But it can also be turning something into something more. And I think that's important. So I will drop a little bit of, rabbinic, Torah over here and quote the Bible. King Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. And it's important to know that there is a commentary on this that says it's not that there's nothing new under the sun. The ingredients already exist. It's how we put them together to create something more meaningful. And we see this with the very famous launch with Steve Jobs and the iPhone, as he was getting us all excited at that keynote. It's a phone, it's a music player, it's an internet device. And he's like going through this mantra, and you're super excited. And it's all about perspective, right? It's all about how we see the world and how we shift our view of how we connect things that already exist together. And I'll just finish off here, and then we'll break into the Q&A, because I think that's always going to be the richer of the conversation, is that the failure is such a huge obstacle of how we engage with the work that we do. And this first attempt in learning, that's in education, a very famous mantra. And I saw that failure was first attempt in learning, but the acronym kept going, unless reflection exists. We have to give our students an opportunity to engage in experiences that failure is part of the journey and not an end result. Like failing your math test, failing your science course, those are bad things. There's reasons why those happen, and you need to be reflective to figure those out. But when you're innovating in the midst of a project and you're trying to do something that's valuable and high risk because it's either complicated or you lack the resources, but you want to try anyway, those moments our students need more than anything in high school to really build up this creative resilience and creative courage that I was talking about before. So, that's sort of like the driving inspiration around a lot of the work that I do. And I'm just excited to see what kind of questions we can, dig deeper in around this theme of creativity.
Perfect. Michael, this is awesome. Good stuff. And before we leap into the questions, I want to introduce the other people on the call. So we have with us Farheen Abbasi, one of our committee members, actually, handling programs for the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Have Mark Doan, who is a longtime friend and a guy who is heavily into creativity and possibilities in education as well. He is the Director of Professional Development for the Illinois Computing Educators Organization and an Apple Distinguished Educator as well. Very nice. My name is Rushton Hurley. I am the charter president of this club and someone who still likes to see us connect with people and talk about really cool ideas. So with that, I will invite Mark or Farheen to toss out the first question. Farheen, I saw you nod. Do you have one ready to go?
I guess, well, first off, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. This is like the first time in all of these Rotary meetings that I've seen such a dynamic, wonderful, awesome, almost TED Talk-like presentation. So this was really exciting for me. I guess, you know how in your first slide where you had that student that, emailed you saying, I had this idea, but I don't know if it's going to be a good one or whatever it was. Do you see your students now have a change of that mindset? And instead of saying, oh, I have this idea, but I don't think it's a good one, or I don't think it's going to work. Like, do you see your students now coming to you saying, I have this idea and I want to do it. Like, I want to try. Can we do this?
Yeah. It's a great question. Thanks for those initial thoughts around the slide deck. I went to art school and I struggled with what that would look like in the rest of the work that I do. And I love storytelling, so I feel like they all sort of merge together. The email was sent by a student who has only AP and honor courses. He is an award-winning essay writer in science research. This high school, it was an international science competition around genetics. He placed third place and thousands of entries. So you would think like he's such a great student, but here's this email, this limitation. It's the students that sort of struggle to fit into the game of school that don't have this obstacle per se. But what I have found in the high school, I've only been here since December. So, December to June, it was this sandbox moment of just getting the students to even just have these hard conversations. This year, as we start the fall, we started 2 days ago, they're interested in the course and they're interested in engaging with me now. And I think they were scared before. They were scared that like it wasn't going to work. But then when they saw sort of like proof of concept by their peers, they realized, it's time to really explore this. But I think that it takes a while. I think that it will take a year for me to sort of like unindoctrinate some of the thinking in these high school students. Now, I didn't have these obstacles in the K-8 experience because they don't have these, because they haven't gone through that full middle school experience where they get prepared for the rigidity and the academic intensity of high school, especially in some of these, these college prep focused schools. So I think, just to answer the question, I hope I already did, is just that I think it takes time. I really think it's a lifelong journey. I think sometimes we can even, as ourselves, feel that we're confident creators and then have those moments of doubt still. And I think it's really a lifelong kind of journey.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to follow. Michael, I so resonate with what you've said. And a lot of us very similar experiences of creating a culture where failure is accepted, especially in school. And I was in public education where the kids, I often was approached by kids, 5 days before report cards come out to say, what's my grade? And my typical habit in the classroom was to never answer any question. I would just say, I don't know. What did you learn? And no. What is my grade? Those are two very separate things in our students' world of what did I get as a score and what did I really learn? And it took a long time, and it's still every class you have that overcoming of what do I have to do to get this certain grade, because that's important to where I'm going to go. And they've lost that intrinsic value of the grade or of the learning process. And I focused a lot upon that. And I see you in this very new position. And I'd love to hear you talk about creating that culture where kids begin to let go of the grade and finding more value in what they've learned.
Yeah.
That's my question.
It's a good question. It's a hard question, because I'd love to say that I've made progress, but I haven't. The Entrepreneur Studio has a point value, has a point system, and each component of each stage of the beginning of at least the first semester, like it has to have that accountability, because that's what they're used to. But as they start to engage in the course, they start to realize, oh wait, he let me choose what I'm interested in. So you think I could do this like on, Saturday night? You think I could work on this like on my free time? Because I mean, he did let me pick what I want. And you start to see some students, and I have a couple examples of students who just like, I said, create an action plan, create a personal growth plan, identify your interests, and then go from there. So some students are like, okay, I want to play it safe. I want to learn a programming language. And that's not a, criticism, at all on that. I think those are really important skills. And I encourage, all schools to have, computer science programs. But that was like a very structured, very simple scoped thing that fits in with their traditional way of school. Is like, okay, so he'll let me pick a course I want to take. So they log into a free online course on, learning Swift or learning Java. Then you have other students who say, okay, I'm going to create a podcast that's going to interview creative people and have a target audience of high school students, to help high school students realize that there's more than just getting good grades to get into college, to get a good job. But here are people who are either doing incredible jobs where, like, what degree would you get to become the head of entertainment at Snapchat? She's one of the individuals that's going to be on our podcast. I don't know if anyone here grew up skateboarding, but I grew up skateboarding in my youth. That's funny. I'm 33 years old, so whatever. I reached out to Tony Hawk and I said, I want to interview you for my podcast. And he hasn't responded yet, but he just followed me on Twitter, which is literally, it is questionable right now if that will go on my resume. Master's in education, followed by Tony Hawk on Twitter. So getting students to like to share that experience with them, that like you can engage with people outside the world. You can create a podcast. You can create an app to help underserviced and underprivileged communities get better access to good quality produce and good quality food. Like, these are the things that start to churn into the minds of students. Other students are just really stuck in it. And you have to literally say to them, like, you might fail this class, which would be kind of weird to fail an entrepreneur class. Although, you know, when entrepreneurs fail, it's usually they fail because they went bankrupt, right? So like, what does it look like for you? And I think that it is just, it's a struggle. And I wish I had a better, like, I solved the problem answer, but I haven't. I'm working on it, you know, sort of etching away at this marble of indoctrination.
Definitely one of the pieces of getting students in that space where they're going to think about these things in some meaningful way has to do with getting them to actually believe that they can be creative. You know, I mean, I think it was Maya Angelou who said creativity is an unlimited resource. You know, the more you use, the more you have. And so I zeroed in very quickly in your bio on that piece of your title that is creativity instigator, right? Like, you know, that was one of those things that for me was like, cool, right? So anyway, the getting people in that space and not just kids, because adults can sit around and talk about the need for creativity in kids and ignore the fact that they don't believe themselves to be creative people, right? Farheen is offering herself up as an example on that front, right? So when you're trying to get people to believe in themselves, are there particular activities or tools or anything that you find has a bit of a record in helping people to stop and go, maybe I could do that?
Yeah, I was successful. It's a new course that I created. I'd never created a course before. I've never canned anything that it could function without me being there. It was a very intense experience. But one of the things that I had to do in the beginning is I had to create or curate, actually in the most case in this beginning step is curate creative and really divergent thinking exercises to get students to really break down their self-limitation on their creative capacity. And so, you know, one of them that I shared, I think I can pull this up real quick and just show you my redraw of the 30 circle challenge. Share my screen real quick over here. All right, you can see that. So this is the 30 circle challenge, and the zoom out here. As you can just see, I promised you there are 30 circles, in fact, there. So you have the 30 circle challenge, and the directions are very simple. In 3 minutes, turn as many circles into recognizable objects as you can. This was created by the mentor of the Kelly brothers at IDEO. Bob McKim is, as I said, I think earlier, the founding professor and head of the design school at Stanford. He has an incredible TED Talk where he does this with the whole audience. And right away, before they even start, there's 8 questions. Can I do it this way? Is this way? Is that way? And I'm going to be intentionally vague because I actually want your audience to try this activity, so I don't want to spoil it. But what ends up happening is that at the end, you have this conversation once you're familiar with what can and what should ensue when you go through the process. You have this reflective conversation with the group of individuals, students, adults, whoever it is, and they start to realize that we express creativity and we problem solve in very specific patterns. Many of the times it's come up with an idea and then do incremental innovations to fulfill the task. Many students panic that, you know, they have to finish it. They only have 3 minutes and the goal is to do all the circles. It didn't say complete 30 circles. It said turn as many as you can. So if you complete 30 circles and they are, you know, not recognizable or recognizable to who, right? So there's all these ways to really build out this conversation around this type of activity. There's the paperclip activity. There's the candle problem. The candle problem is hysterical. I was positive when I was reading Daniel Pink's book Drive that he shows this candle problem that was created by this psychologist in, like, I think the early 50s. And you have this series of tasks to perform to get a candle attached to a wall so that the wax doesn't drip. And like, I'd seen this before. I'm like, where did I see this? And I go into my educational psychology book from my graduate program, and sure enough, it's in there, and it's breaking down this whole process of something called functional fixedness. So going through activities like this, they're hands-on and they're impactful. There's the Torrance creativity test, which I have yet to figure out a way to actually administer that to my students. Like, I'm willing to pay for it. I have to still research, but they have free ones that give you like a very superficial ranking and sort of assessment of your creative capacity by asking you a series of questions and going through a series of activities. The paperclip one is super famous. You know, here's a paperclip, how many uses can it have? And many of us come up with 5, 10, 15, maybe 20. And a kindergartner will come up with 200 and like feel no limitations. Sir Ken Robinson in his famous TED Talk refers to the paperclip challenge in that video, in that TED Talk is, you know, can the paperclip be 200 feet tall and made out of styrofoam, right? Like why are we defining a paperclip as this big piece of metal, right? So things like that are just really cool activities where students can really start to push their problem-solving process to then be open to then diving into their own self-discovery.
Awesome stuff. I got so many questions, and we're running out of time. But Mark or Farheen, if you have like a quick one you want to toss in there. If not, actually, Michael, give us the quick, like, here are some things that students are thinking about in terms of their entrepreneurial projects.
Yeah, for sure. So I use design thinking as the framework of design process for the entrepreneur course, because I love how powerful beginning innovation with empathy can be. And I know it's powerful because the famous companies that we think of when we think of the word innovation, like the Ubers and the Airbnbs, they all started with empathy. And when you go into their founding stories, you see it that they had a problem and they realized other people had this problem. And it only turned into a $1 billion company later, but it didn't start that way. It started with this desire to help others. And so when we begin with this process of the design thinking process and getting them to kind of sandbox and create different, you know, projects, then they're ready to really go off on their own. So we have students who, you know, are really just like, I want to become a software engineer. Okay, so let's spend 3 days a week going through whether it's structured online content that you're watching or sandboxing or activities you're going through. Let's set up a plan for you to become a JavaScript software developer. And then let's see how far you can get in a school year. I think you can get pretty far. I have students, I said before, the podcast, the app. I have students that actually want to help their parents succeed in their family business. And I thought that was really cool, because it's like, at first I was like, well, you know, is that the easy way out? You just want to work for your parents? No, they genuinely have, because not all of them, there's certain students that have come up to me, they want to help their parents succeed. I was like, wow, what an incredible character trait that you want to help. So then I said, well, let's take it to the next level. And this isn't anything new. Don Wettrick does this in Indiana, is let's partner with businesses. So the next phase of the entrepreneur course ends up with, are there businesses, are there people in your community that you could help? Could you go to somebody and say, hi, I'm interested in marketing. I want to become a marketer, or I want to become a content creator. And I'd love to create 15 videos for you for free. Like, sure, they're in. And now you have a legitimate company partnering with you. Now you have a legitimate portfolio and a reference if you do a good job. And you built a relationship and you provided value. And all of those things that I just described are parts of the entrepreneurial thinking process. Providing value, the desire to help others when you provide that value, and then doing good for community. And hopefully you can make money doing it. And you might not make money the first time, but that's why it's cool to start this in high school versus, you know, me, I have, you know, a wife and 4 kids. It's really hard for me to sort of experiment in my innovative practice when I have to, you know, pay for private school, put food on the table and things of that nature. Then I have students who, you know, we just got a laser etcher, laser cutter installed. We have 3D printers in our innovation lab. We have a CNC machine. We have table saws, drill presses. They're going to build stuff. They're going to figure out how to prototype. And who knows, we might have a student who actually surprises me and says, I'm ready for a Kickstarter campaign. I actually have a prototype. I'm ready to go. But like, fostering these types of creativity is really just giving it over to them. Let's train, let's learn the skills, let's gain an awareness of the world around us, and let's figure things out. And hopefully you have the right training so you don't, you know, drill, you know, through your hands. So, you know, always safety first, right? But like, You got to give them that space to surprise you and let them come up with the ideas. And that's what I think has been not just my success as the director of innovation, but also as building relationship, building community with these high school students. It's hard to come in the middle of the year and in December and build a bond. And I literally had seniors saying to me in April and May that they wish that they had reached out to me because they would have ended up taking my course, but they didn't connect with me. And that's rare. Usually when you come into a school, the seniors are like the last, unless you teach seniors, they're the last ones to be interested in anything you have to do. So it's things like that just, they get me excited. I feel like it's genuine innovation or potential for innovation that these students are doing. Very
cool stuff. I'll wind things down and then hand the last word to you. But for all of our guests, make sure to let us know you were here. There's a little thing down there where you can put your name and your email address. And if you spell your email address right, you'll end up with an email that you can pass along to your club secretary for making up a miss at your own club if that's of interest. A little farther down, there's our discuss section, DISQUS, discuss. And we want to hear from you there too. What did you think? What did you think of the program? What did you think of the other elements of the meeting? Our goal is to have every Rotarian everywhere care enough about opportunities for service and inspiration that they're 100% attenders, and they can always do that by 4 a.m. Saturday in their pajamas, like attending one of our meetings. All good. So we hope that we will hear from you, and we hope that we will see you again next week. And for the last word, I hand it back to the tech rabbi, Michael Cohen.
So the last word is just start. I think that is the scariest part of all of this, is that, the famous quote from Voltaire, perfect is the enemy of done, or perfect is the enemy of good. It is so important for students, for business owners, for anyone watching this. You have to start if you believe that thing that you want to do has value that you can bring into the world.
Beautiful. See you next week.